Burnout. We've all been there. You're tired, you're a little depressed, and the work you used to love now feels like pointless drudgery. You feel stuck, helpless, and hopeless. You just need a break, right? Well, not so fast. There are actually 6 kinds of burnout, and for most of them, getting more rest isn't actually what's going to fix it. Some people are finally waking up to just how bad workplace burnout can be. For example, in Iceland, they've just started doing 4-day work weeks. Even though there's a lot more talk about burnout these days, most people still don't understand it, and so they still don't know how to address it. People think that burnout is just a result of working too much. So we think the cure is just to get some rest, right? Well, sort of.
The breakdown of community is really problems
Christina
with...
Maslach is like the premier researcher on occupational burnout. She's identified 6 major causes of burnout. And the first one is called workload burnout. When I was coming into my final year of seminary, I experienced an extreme case of burnout. I was taking way too many classes, I was working full-time, and I was looking for a job as a pastor. I found myself becoming depressed, not feeling motivated anymore. It was burnout. But guess what? When I finished my classes and graduated and I went down to a normal workload, I felt better. I wasn't burnt out anymore. But one of the things I've come to realize is that it's not always the workload that gets us. I mean, think about it. Have you ever worked really hard on something that you really enjoy and feel really passionate about? The hours add up, but you don't feel them. You see, a lot of times we're burning out not because we're doing too much, but because one of these other 5 triggers is at play. The second type of burnout is control, and this is one that I had never thought of, but as soon as I heard it, it made perfect sense. When I was in college, we had a class in which we were assigned to a group at the beginning of the semester, and that group did group projects for the entire semester. So who you got stuck with was who you were stuck with. Group projects are the worst. If you are a teacher, stop assigning group projects. Nobody likes them. They're not helpful. Please don't do it. My group got assigned a guy who didn't want to do his part. He rarely came to the meetings where we plan our presentations and assign work, and a lot of times he wouldn't even show up to the presentations. It was extremely frustrating, but it was also extremely demotivating, and the professor wouldn't do anything about it. After he did this to us a couple times, our group basically started phoning it in for the rest of the semester. We stopped trying hard on the projects because what was the point? It was out of our control. This guy was just going to mess it up. When we don't feel that we're in control of the outcome of our work, we lose motivation and we can burn out. You know, there's actually an entire field of psychology called locus of control theory. It argues that the level of motivation we have for something is proportional to the amount of control we feel like we have over the success of that project. So you might be feeling burnt out at work, and it's not because you have too much to do, it's because you're being micromanaged. The third source of burnout can come from reward, specifically lack of reward. God designed us to be people who are motivated by reward. That's a good thing. But we can experience workplace burnout when we feel like we're not being properly compensated for our work, or even just being recognized for it. If this is the type of burnout that you're experiencing, rest isn't going to fix that, and neither is vacation, because you're going to come back to work and those issues are still going to be there. And the fourth source of burnout is community. Sometimes you can love your job, you can love what you're doing, but you can't stand the people you work with. If you have bad or strained relationships with your colleagues, it can actually lead to burnout when everything else is fine. If you can resolve those relational difficulties, you can make your work much more enjoyable, and you can be the light of Christ in your workplace. And the fifth cause of workplace burnout is fairness. Maybe someone's getting favoritism, maybe someone who more deserves it's getting passed over. Even if there's things that don't directly affect you, if you feel like your workplace isn't fair, that can cause you to lose motivation and actually burn out, even though everything else is great. And that really is the attitude that burnout brings us to. What's the point of doing anything if it doesn't really matter? And the sixth and final source of burnout is values. I've worked at a lot of Christian organizations, and one of the things I've always said is the best part of the compensation package is the meaning that comes with the work. If you're working somewhere where the values don't align with your own, eventually you're going to burn out. Maybe you have a boss that's asking you to lie, or the work just doesn't line up with what's important to you. But realistically, A lot of times, we just have to do the job that we're in, even though it feels meaningless. And in those cases, you can supply your own meaning. What I mean is that you can be a witness in your workplace, or you can be a source of light in a dark industry. The point is, if you want to stick at your job for the long haul, well, you're going to have to find a way to make that work align with your values. Okay, so now that I've convinced you that you're teetering precariously on the edge of burnout, what do you do about it? A lot of times we assume that just because we feel like we're burning out, it's because we have too much on our plates. But sometimes there's more to the puzzle. If we take the time to consider why we're feeling burned out, we'll be better equipped to deal with the problem. So here's a quick 4-step plan for addressing burnout. First, identify. Think through that list of 6 causes of burnout. Is there one of them that jumps out at you? Now bear in mind, there might be more than one that's causing your burnout, but think through them again. Is your workload too much? Are you feeling that you don't have a sense of control over the outcome of your work? Or is it that you're lacking reward? You're not being recognized for the effort you're putting in. Second, remediate. Now that you have identified what's causing your burnout, see if you can come up with a solution. One of the things that's interesting about a lot of these causes of burnout is that most of them have to do with perception. You might feel that your workplace is unfair, but it's not actually unfair. You might think that you don't have control over the outcome of your work, but it could be that you have more power than you think you do. My point is simply that oftentimes our burnout is due less to the objective difficulty of our work and more to our subjective feelings about the work. Sometimes our perception is just flat out wrong, and we need to shift it. This is an opportunity for prayer and often confession of sin for having a grumbling attitude. But it's also an opportunity to address some of these things with your employer. Maybe you can fix these issues that are causing you to burn out. And third, seek contentment. Sometimes there really is nothing you can do about the situation. And in those cases, we simply need to hand it over to the Lord and ask for His help to be content in our current situation. The fact is, in life, our circumstances won't always make us happy. But with God's help, we can be content even when the situation is awful. And number 4, quit. Seriously. Quit. Whatever's causing your burnout might not actually be able to be fixed. If you're being micromanaged, if there's toxic relationships at your work, or if there's things that are happening that fundamentally go against your values, you can quit. Of course, you do want to go about that responsibly. You want to honor your employer and you want to make sure that, you have another job lined up. But if your job is making you miserable and you have tried to find a way to be content in it and you're able to find other means of employment, you don't have to stay. So if you find that you're facing burnout at your job, work through these 4 steps. Identify, remediate, seek contentment, and if all else fails, find something else to do. And I would love to hear from you guys in the comments. Have you ever experienced burnout at work? And if so, which of those 6 triggers do you think was causing it? If you liked this and you want more on a Christian approach to personal productivity, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel? Thanks. I'll see you in the next one.